certain in who you are that people instinctively fall in line. Not because they fear you, but because they respect the gravity of your peace. This is not for the average mind. This is for those who have outgrown chaos, who are ready to build an aura so steady, so commanding, that influence becomes effortless. Today, you'll learn how to forge that aura, the kind of presence that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't flinch. It decides. Because the moment you stop needing validation, the world starts seeking your approval instead. Drop a lock in the comments if you're ready to master the kind of power that speaks in silence. Now, let's begin. Every empire begins with one decision to stop being reactive. The weak are controlled by emotion, anger, envy, insecurity. The strong control those emotions until even chaos bends to their rhythm. Because real command doesn't begin when others obey you, it begins the moment you obey yourself. When you master your reactions, you master the battlefield of perception. Most people don't lose because they're incapable. They lose because they reveal too much their fear in their eyes, their desperation in their tone, their need for validation in every argument. And every time they reveal, they surrender control. The Stoics called it apatheia, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the foundation of aura inner stability. People follow certainty, even when they don't understand it. They're drawn to composure the way a storm respects the mountain, not because it's loud, but because it doesn't move. When your calm becomes unbreakable, you radiate authority. When your peace becomes disciplined, you project inevitability. This kind of calm is not natural. It's forged. You build it every time you choose patience over provocation, silence over reaction, self-control over impulse. Every time you breathe instead of explode, you tell the universe, "I am not to be moved." Most men talk to prove their worth. Stoic men show it through composure. Machiavellian men weaponize that composure, turning every pause, every measured glance, into a psychological message. I do not respond to noise. I dictate rhythm. Calm is command, not because it's passive, but because it forces others to adapt to your tempo. The frantic will slow down around you. The disrespectful will hesitate, and the insecure will retreat, because your silence reflects their chaos back at them. The modern world glorifies constant reaction, the instant reply, the emotional post, the desperate defense. But true influence flows from those who do the opposite, the ones who wait, observe, calculate, then act once with precision. Their stillness terrifies people who depend on noise to feel relevant, to forge a ruthless aura. You must make stillness your strategy. Before you enter a room, regulate your breathing. Before you respond to disrespect, regulate your thoughts. Before you act, measure your outcome. Each act of restraint sharpens your aura like a blade cooled in silence. And when people sense that you cannot be provoked, they begin to respect you differently. Because emotional control is the rarest power in existence, and those who possess it become magnetic. They're not chasing validation, they generate it through presence. Remember, fire burns itself out. Water carves through stone. Be the water steady, relentless, silent, because calm is not the absence of emotion, it's the command of it. That is the first law of aura. Control yourself so completely that others can't help but follow your lead. And once that foundation is set, you no longer walk into rooms searching for respect. Respect rearranges itself around you. Power doesn't just come from what you feel, it comes from what you hide. The strongest man in the room is not the loudest. He's the one whose expression gives nothing away. Because in silence and stillness, people begin to imagine what you're thinking, and what they imagine is always more powerful than what's real. The Stoics called this discipline mastery of appearance. Machiavelli called it the mask. Both understood the same truth. Mystery commands attention. People don't fear what they can read. They fear what they can't predict. Every emotion you show becomes a piece of leverage someone can use against you. Show irritation, they'll test your patience. Show excitement, they'll manipulate your desire. Show insecurity, they'll control your validation. But show stillness, and they see nothing to grab onto. They're left spinning in the fog of your composure, trying to guess what you might do next. That is control, not through aggression but through perception. The mask of power is not deception, it's discipline. It's the ability to choose what version of you the world gets to see. A face that doesn't twitch when provoked, a tone that doesn't rise when challenged, a demeanor that says, "I am unshaken, and you can't read me." It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally sovereign. You own your feelings, but they never own you. Epictetus once said, "If someone can anger you, they own you." To wear the mask is to reclaim that ownership, to project serenity so profound that those who seek reaction end up frustrated by your calm. The mask also has magnetic power. In a world addicted to overexposure, restraint becomes rare, and rarity creates value. While others chase attention through noise, you attract it through absence. When your energy stays measured and your expression unreadable, people lean closer, curious, unsettled, drawn in. That's not manipulation, it's psychological gravity. Think of your composure as armor. Every time you react emotionally, you take it off. Every time you pause and breathe instead, you reinforce it. When you can hold your center under pressure, you broadcast a message without words. I am not competing with you. I am simply beyond you. And people sense that instinctively. It's not arrogance, it's control. You move slower, speak less, hold longer silences, and let others reveal their chaos first. Most people crumble under silence because it mirrors the noise within them. But you stand still, unmoved. And that stillness commands obedience without demand. Even your smallest gestures become symbols of authority. A slow turn of the head, a pause before a word, a glance that lands, then lingers. You don't need to explain yourself. You only need to exist with intention. Because the mask of power is not about pretending to be calm. It's about becoming calm so deeply, so consistently, that peace itself becomes your aura. That's when power shifts. That's when rooms adjust to you instead of the other way around. And remember, the mask is not there to hide weakness. It's there to protect the strength you're still building. Your silence will make the shallow nervous. Your stillness will make the impulsive defensive. But the wise, they'll recognize what it truly is, discipline in human form. When your face becomes unreadable, your tone becomes measured, and your emotions become yours alone. You've entered a new realm of power, one where you no longer need to assert control, because you embody it. That's the art of the mask. Control the surface. Master the depths. And let the world bow to the version of you it can never fully understand. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's something people calculate, often subconsciously. They don't respect what you say. They respect what happens when they cross you. That's the unspoken language of consequence and the foundation of any aura that commands obedience without words. The Stoics never used the word fear, but they understood it. They knew that when a man lives by clear principles and enforces them consistently, people align themselves around his standards automatically, not because he threatens them, but because his steadiness exposes their disorder. Machiavelli called it predictable punishment. He wrote that fear is not cruelty, it's stability, the knowledge that boundaries have meaning. People can live with discipline. They cannot live with uncertainty. So here's the truth: if there are no consequences, there is no respect. The moment you tolerate disrespect, you teach the world that you'll absorb it again. And once that pattern is written, it's difficult to erase. Every person you meet will test you not out of malice, but out of instinct. They push to learn your limits. They watch to see if your calm is strength or fear, and in that moment, your reaction defines the entire relationship. The Stoic response isn't rage or vengeance. It's clarity. You don't yell. You don't explain. You simply withdraw access, attention, energy. Because the most terrifying punishment in a world starving for validation is indifference. When your silence replaces your reaction, people begin to feel the weight of their own behavior. They start to recognize the value of what they lost: your presence. That's the essence of consequence. No spectacle, just absence. You don't destroy them. You let their own awareness do it for you. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He wasn't advocating weakness, he was teaching dominance through restraint. When you refuse to lower your vibration to match disrespect, you expose the imbalance in the other person. And the mind, when confronted with imbalance, craves restoration, which often looks like remorse, respect, or retreat. But consequence isn't always silence. Sometimes it's precision. If someone disrespects you publicly, correct them once calmly, directly, with words so measured that the room feels the air change. That's not aggression. That's authority. And authority doesn't shout, it simply sets the record straight and then returns to silence. Because your power doesn't come from the punishment itself, it comes from the consistency of your standards. The world eventually learns how to treat you by observing what you allow. That's why Stoicism and Machiavellian strategy are not opposites, they're complementary. One gives you clarity, the other gives you execution. When you enforce consequence, People start to self-correct around you. They lower their tone. They measure their words. They begin to anticipate what you will or will not tolerate. That's not control. That's gravity. You've shifted from explaining boundaries to embodying them. And that embodiment is what makes your aura so commanding. But remember this balance. Respect rooted in fear alone will crumble. Fear fadis. Integrity endures. Your goal is not to intimidate people into obedience. It's to train the world to treat you with the respect you give yourself. To make kindness your choice, not your obligation. The modern world confuses tolerance with virtue. It's not. Tolerance without discernment is self-betrayal. And when you betray yourself to keep the peace, you lose both peace and power. So speak the language of respect, fluently, be calm, be clear, be consistent. Never let émotion dictate réaction, never repeat yourself twice, and never explain boundaries to those committed to crossing them. When your presence carries consequence, you no longer need to demand respect. People feel it before they act. They sense that violating your peace comes with a price they're not willing to pay. That's the quiet law of power. Make your standards known through silence, and your absence feared through consequence. There's a point in your evolution where you stop reacting, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand the cost of doing so. Detachment is not apathy. It's clarity. It's the ability to see everything praise, rejection, betrayal, flattery, and remain unmoved. Because the man who reacts is ruled by circumstance, but the man who observes is ruled by choice. This is what the Stoics called ataraxia, inner peace that can't be shaken, a fire that burns cold. The kind of composure that unnerves manipulators and confuses emotional people. When you reach this state, you don't chase closure, you create distance. You don't argue to be understood, you act to be remembered. And you don't seek validation, you radiate certainty. The truth is, most people are emotional hostages. They're controlled by whoever can trigger them. Someone insults them, they explode. Someone ignores them, they panic. Someone praises them, they start performing for approval again. Their power changes hands every time their mood does. But you can't afford that. Because aura is energy. And every time you react, you leak it. Detachment doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you choose when and how to feel. It's emotional precision. You can express love without losing judgment. Anger without losing control. Compassion without losing direction. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology gave it a name. He wrote that emotion clouds calculation, and the ruler who cannot detach from personal affection will lose to one who can. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom. When you detach, you stop negotiating with chaos. You stop trying to fix people who thrive on your reactions. You stop explaining what silence can teach more efficiently. You realize that walking away isn't avoidance, it's protection of your frequency. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, he transmutes it. Pain becomes discipline. Loss becomes clarity. Disrespect becomes a filter. Every situation is converted into a lesson about self-command. When you detach, You begin to notice how many things never deserved your energy in the first place. The argument you almost had, the person you almost begged, the explanation you almost gave. You see how peace was always there. You just kept trading it for attention. And here's the paradox: the more detached you become, the more powerful you appear. Because nothing is more intimidating than a person who cannot be emotionally baited. Your indifference becomes the loudest threat. Your calm becomes the sharpest response. People sense it. They adjust their tone. They measure their words. Because deep down, they know they no longer have access to your emotional buttons. Detachment also sharpens perception. When emotion no longer distorts your vision, you start to see motives clearly: who's genuine, who's opportunistic, who adds peace, who drains it. You no longer need intuition, you have observation. That's the Stoic advantage. Remember, emotional detachment isn't about rejecting humanity, it's about reclaiming sovereignty. You still love, but you don't attach. You still care, but you don't cling. You still give, but you don't bleed. That's how a man becomes untouchable, not by closing his heart, but by ruling it. The cold fire of Stoicism isn't lifeless. It's alive in silence, disciplined in motion, calm under attack. It's the fire that burns inward, refining you, not consuming you. The world will call you cold. Let them. They only say that because they mistake their chaos for warmth. In reality, detachment isn't the absence of passion, it's the elevation of it. Passion, purified by control, becomes focus, and focus builds empires. So when they try to provoke you, don't rise, remain. When they test your peace, don't argue, observe. When they walk away, don't chase, breathe. Because in that stillness, you prove mastery not of others, but of yourself. That is the cold fire. That is detachment. And it is the reason why those who once toyed with your emotions will one day whisper your name with quiet awe, not because you fought them, but because you outgrew them. Silence is not emptiness. It's a weapon, invisible, sharp, and perfectly balanced. The loud rely on words to prove their worth. The wise use silence to make the world reveal itself. Every time you speak, you give away a piece of your strategy. Every time you respond too quickly, you teach people how to control your tempo. But when you stay still, when you let silence fill the space, you shift power without effort. Because silence forces others to sit with their own noise. And most can't stand it. The Stoics understood this. They knew that mastery of speech begins with mastery of restraint. Epictetus warned, "Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary, because in silence, you gather what the reckless spill. You read tone. You catch contradictions. You watch how comfort turns to nervousness. You see truth in the pause that follows their lies. Silence creates pressure, the kind that cracks egos open. It makes people talk more than they should, confess more than they planned, and reveal more than they realize. That's why the one who speaks less always knows more. But silence alone is not enough. You must also master the blade, your words. Words are not for reaction. They are for redirection. They are the scalpel that shapes perception. The moment you open your mouth, your tone, rhythm, and vocabulary all signal status. So speak with economy. Short sentences, long pauses, every word deliberate. Never explain, never justify, just state. When you justify, you lower yourself to the level of the accuser. When you explain, you surrender authority. A ruler doesn't clarify his purpose, he executes it. Your words should carry that energy, steady, slow, irreversible, each one a verdict, not a plea. And when you do speak, stop before you've said enough. Leave room for interpretation. Mystery is the echo of restraint. The less you say, the more people fill the silence with their imagination, and imagination always exaggerates power. Silence is the sheath that gives your words their edge. Without it, words become noise, but with it, every word becomes prophecy. This balance of pause and precision is what makes your aura magnetic. You don't dominate conversations, you anchor them. People wait for you to speak because your silence trains them to listen. Even in conflict, your words should never react, only recalibrate. When someone disrespects you, don't argue. State the truth once, calmly. Then retreat back into silence. Because silence after truth is finality, it ends the discussion without demanding agreement. That's power, not the need to be right, but the ability to end chaos with a single line. Remember, weak men use noise to feel powerful. Strong men use silence to become undeniable. One screams to be heard. The other commands to be remembered. In every room you enter, let silence introduce you. Let your eyes speak first. Your body language speak second. And your words, when finally delivered, cut through the air like a blade drawn from a sheath of stillness. Because when silence becomes your default language and speech, your chosen weapon, you no longer participate in noise, you orchestrate it. You will notice something strange happens. People start quoting you. They remember your phrases. They replay your pauses. Not because your words were many, but because they were measured. In a world addicted to noise, clarity becomes dominance. Stillness becomes seduction. So speak less. Mean more. Use silence to watch the world unfold, and words to shape it when you must. Every master of aura knows this secret. The power isn't in the voice, it's in the restraint before the voice. Presence isn't how you look, it's what the room feels the moment you arrive. You've seen it before, that rare kind of person who walks in quietly, and suddenly everyone straightens up, speaks softer, and becomes aware of themselves. That's not coincidence. That's gravity. That's presence. Presence is invisible dominance, a signal that says, I belong here, and everything else will adjust. You don't ask for attention. You command it without speaking. The Stoics never talked about charisma in the modern sense, but they lived it. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of the greatest empires in history, not through theatrics, but through composure. He moved like a man who had already decided what mattered. And that's the essence of presence, selective energy. You carry yourself like your time is gold, because it is. Every step, every glance, every pause becomes a message. I don't rush. I decide. That's how calm becomes power. It makes others question their own rhythm. Most people lose presence because they chase approval. They talk too fast. They fill silence. They oversmile to be accepted. But every extra movement screams insecurity. When you move less, speak slower, and hold still, you signal dominance, not arrogance, assurance. Your body language speaks long before your words. Stand grounded, shoulders back, chin level, breath deep, never fidget. Never scan the room for validation. You are the anchor. Everything else moves around you. And when you make eye contact, hold it calm, steady, unflinching. Never dart your gaze away. It betrays self-doubt. The first one to break eye contact always yields the frame. Presence is not about being seen, it's about being felt. When you speak, lower your tone. Slow down your rhythm. Let silence punctuate your sentences like thunder after lightning, because pauses carry more power than noise ever could. When you pause, people lean in. They listen not because they have to, but because they can't help it. Even your breathing is part of your presence. The shallow breathe fast, the powerful breathe slow. Your heartbeat dictates the room's tempo. Control it. And you control the energy around you. But presence isn't just physical, it's spiritual discipline. It's the conviction that you don't need to prove anything. That's what makes others feel small in your stillness. Not intimidation, reflection. Your silence mirrors their chaos. And in that mirror, they sense order, power. Calm the things they secretly wish they had. Presence also thrives on scarcity. Be less available. Don't attend every event. Don't respond instantly. Don't explain every move. The more selective your access, the higher your perceived value. Because people don't respect what's always there. They crave what's rare. Think of it like this: when the sun sets every evening, we take it for granted. But when an eclipse happens, silence falls. Cameras rise. The world looks up. Why? Because rarity amplifies reverence. Your presence should feel the same. A Stoic doesn't seek attention. He becomes impossible to ignore. Not by volume, but by vibration. He radiates a calm that unsettles the frantic, a discipline that exposes the weak, and a peace that demands respect. Presence is a declaration: I have mastered myself. Therefore the world bends to me. It's not ego, it's equilibrium. And the paradox of true presence is this: the less you do, the more you influence. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less you speak, the more they listen. So train your energy like a warrior polishes his blade. Cut away haste. Eliminate fidgeting. Breathe slower. Speak with weight. And watch the world rearrange itself to your rhythm. Because when your presence becomes unshakable, you don't need power. You become it. Every mind has strings. You just have to learn how to pull them. The Stoics called it understanding human nature. Machiavelli called it leverage. Different words, same truth. He who understands people controls them. Most men try to control through noise orders, arguments, domination. But true power works in silence. It doesn't push, it pulls. It bends behavior through invisible influence, not visible force. To master leverage, you must first master observation. Watch how people respond to praise. Watch how they react to rejection. Watch what makes them uncomfortable or eager to impress. People reveal their entire psychological map in small moments. The one who listens without speaking learns what others try to hide. Every person is driven by two primal motives: fear of loss and hope of gain. The Stoics studied this to transcend it. The Machiavellians studied it to command it. You must do both. Rise above your own impulses so you can clearly see theirs. Leverage begins with insight. Ask yourself silently when you meet someone, what do they fear losing? What do they secretly crave for some? It's validation. For others, it's access, approval, attention, or status. When you identify that currency, you control the exchange without them realizing. Here's the paradox: you don't have to manipulate anyone. You simply have to understand them better than they understand themselves. Because once you do, they start adjusting their behavior to fit your perception. That's psychological gravity, invisible, but irresistible. The Stoic uses this knowledge not to exploit, but to navigate. He doesn't get drawn into emotional traps because he already sees the pattern. He knows that anger seeks reaction, flattery seeks control, and guilt seeks permission, so he gives none. His awareness becomes armor. The Machiavellian, however, takes it further. He uses awareness as architecture. He positions himself as the source of what others value most. If they crave approval, he grants it sparingly. If they fear exclusion, he withdraws strategically. If they desire opportunity, he becomes the gatekeeper. That's how dependence is built, not through force, but through quiet indispensability. But here's where Stoicism refines the game. You must never use leverage recklessly. Once people sense they're being played, your influence dissolves. The most effective control is the one they never perceive. You guide, but you never boast. You plant ideas, but let them think they discovered them. You become the calm architect behind chaos unseen. Woodfelt, this is not deception, it's precision. Because real power isn't about taking advantage of others, it's about understanding advantage itself. You learn how motives work, how fear dictates behavior, how ego disguises weakness. And then you position yourself above it all, detached, deliberate, disciplined. Here's the quiet rule of leverage. Never pull the string too tight. A puppet that feels the control fights back. A person who feels autonomy, even within your influence. Romain loyal. Give enough freedom for comfort, but not enough to forget your importance. That balance creates psychological dependence, and dependence creates authority. The Stoic's power comes from clarity. The strategist's power comes from direction. Combine both, and you create inevitability. People start moving in alignment with your vision, not because they're forced to, but because your calm certainty becomes their compass. That's why the truly powerful rarely shout. They don't need to. They shape perception instead of confronting it. Their silence rewires the environment until others obey by instinct. In time, you'll notice something extraordinary. You stop needing to convince anyone. People just follow, not out of fear, not even out of admiration, but because your presence represents structure in a world of confusion, and human nature always gravitates toward order. That's psychological leverage, the art of guiding minds without chains, the science of command through understanding. So study people. Listen deeper than their words. Notice what they repeat, what they avoid, what they defend. Every word hides a motive. Every motive hides a weakness. And when you can see those clearly, while staying detached, you hold the invisible strings of power. Not to manipulate, but to master the game. Most never realize they're playing. Power isn't built by what you say yes to. It's defined by what you refuse to tolerate. Every king, every Stoic, every unshakable mind in history, they all had one trait in common. They knew where their lines were drawn. You see, boundaries aren't about walls. They're about worth. They declare, silently but unmistakably, that your energy, your time, and your peace are not free. They are sacred, and only those who honor that sanctity are allowed near. Weak men crumble because they fear rejection. They want to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as good. So they bend, they overgive, they explain, they say yes when every part of their soul screams no, and the world devours them. But the Stoic warrior, he does not beg to be understood. He does not explain his absence. He does not justify his standards. His silence is his explanation. His restraint is his law. And his boundaries. They are not flexible, they are forged in fire. When you start enforcing your lines, people will resist. They will guilt trip you. They will label you cold, arrogant, or selfish. Let them. That's the cry of those who once fed off your lack of discipline. They don't miss you. They miss the version of you that let them get away with everything. Boundaries expose parasites. The moment you stop bleeding energy, the leeches reveal themselves. And that revelation is your liberation. Machiavelli once said that mercy must serve order, not chaos. In the same way, your compassion must serve your clarity. If your kindness lacks structure, it becomes self-destruction. You can't heal others while you're constantly bleeding. The Stoics called this rational love, compassion guided by reason, not guilt. You help where it uplifts, not where it drains. You forgive without re-entry. You care without losing control. And when you live by this standard, something changes. Your no begins to carry more power than most people's yes. Because your boundaries speak the language of self-respect, people start adjusting their behavior around you. They measure their words. They weigh their actions. Because deep down, they know crossing you has cost. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in access. You see, power doesn't always come from aggression. Sometimes it comes from absence, from knowing that your time, your presence, your energy are privileges, not guarantees. When people know you can walk away and mean it, you become untouchable. Boundaries are not only external, they are internal. They are the discipline that governs your own impulses. Your greatest enemy is rarely someone else's disrespect. It's your own lack of self-command. Every time you scroll mindlessly, every time you react emotionally, every time you entertain people who drain you, you weaken your empire from within. The Stoics knew this truth deeply. He who conquers himself conquers the world. A man who cannot rule his appetite will never rule his environment. So you must become ruthless, not toward others, but toward the parts of you that sabotage your peace. The urge to please, the craving for approval, the addiction to chaos. Destroy them before they destroy you. Remember, every no you speak is a declaration of sovereignty. It tells the world and your own mind that your life is no longer open to negotiation. Your peace is not a democracy. Your boundaries are not up for debate. And the day you start living that truth, you stop chasing respect. It starts orbiting you. Because here's the paradox of ruthless boundaries: they don't distance the right people. They filter out the wrong ones. Those who belong in your life will recognize your strength and rise to meet it. Those who don't will fall away naturally, crushed by the gravity of your new standard. And that's how empires, inner and outer, are built, not through constant battle, but through clarity, through calm, unwavering, self-governing discipline. You don't need to shout your standards. You live them. You don't need to warn people about crossing the line. Your silence does that for you. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're spiritual order. They're the sacred geometry of peace, the invisible architecture that turns chaos into kingdom. So the next time someone tries to test your limits, don't argue, don't explain, don't fight. Just enforce. Because when you enforce your boundaries with calmness and conviction, you're not just protecting your energy, you're broadcasting your worth. And those who understand will align. Those who don't will disappear. Either way, you win. Mercy without wisdom is weakness, and cruelty without control is chaos. True power lives in the balance between the two. Most people fear cruelty because they associate it with evil. But cruelty, when guided by principle and purpose, is not evil. It's correction. It is the hand that cuts infection before it spreads. It is the flame that purifies before it consumes. Machiavelli said that cruelty, if well applied, can secure power faster than misplaced mercy. And the Stoics would agree, not because they glorified harm, but because they understood that a soft heart without a sharp mind leads to self-destruction. Strategic cruelty is not about hurting others. It's about being willing to do what weak men cannot, to sever toxic ties without hesitation, to end manipulative dynamics without guilt, to make decisions that look harsh, but preserve your sanity, your mission, and your empire. You see, every empire, internal or external, requires fire. Without it, weeds grow, parasites multiply. People test your patience until it breaks. And your kindness becomes currency for exploitation. That's why you must learn the art of cold execution, to cut swiftly and silently. What threatens your order? No arguments, no justification. Just consequence. When someone disrespects you repeatedly, you don't lecture them. You erase them. You don't rage. You remove. Because nothing burns the manipulator more than your indifference backed by decisive action. Strategic cruelty is psychological precision. It's knowing when to act, how hard to strike, and when to stop. You don't punish constantly, you punish memorably. One act of silent decisiveness echoes longer than 1,000 speeches. But remember, cruelty must never come from ego. The moment it does, it corrupts you. Your goal is not vengeance, it's restoration. To restore order, balance, and self-respect. Be cruel only when necessary to your laziness, your weakness, your fear. Be merciless toward the parts of yourself that keep you small. Because before you can demand respect from the world, you must command it within. When you master this balance, compassion guided by discipline, and cruelty directed by reason, you transcend ordinary morality. You become both protector and punisher, healer and destroyer, and people feel it. They sense the steel behind your calm. They think twice before disrespecting you, because they know your silence isn't weakness, it's warning. So wield cruelty not as chaos, but as control. Let it be the fire that clears your path, the storm that ends disorder, the line that no one dares to cross again. That's not evil. That's evolution. And evolution, by nature, is never gentle. There comes a point in your evolution where power no longer needs to be performed. It simply exists. It moves through you, not because you demand it, but because you've become it. This is the crown of untouchability, the final stage of transformation. It's not about domination anymore. It's about inevitability. You are no longer trying to bend others to your will. Your presence bends reality itself. To reach this stage, you've burned through every illusion, the illusion of validation, the illusion of control, the illusion of needing to be understood. You've walked through silence, detachment, boundaries, and strategic cruelty. You've faced the death of your old self and survived. Now, what remains is essence, cold, pure, focused. You are no longer ruled by emotion. You direct it, no longer reactive. You orchestrate. You've transcended the ego's need to win. You play the game itself. The untouchable man doesn't seek admiration or fear. He understands both are temporary currencies. He moves with a calm so profound that people mistake it for mystery, when in truth, it's mastery. Your silence has become language. Your presence, persuasion. Your detachment, dominance. You no longer argue. You no longer chase. You no longer explain. Because every second spent proving yourself is a second stolen from becoming yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And in that realization lies untouchability, because once your peace can't be stolen, nothing can be used against you. That's the paradox of power. The more you need to appear powerful, the weaker you are. The more you can remain still while others panic. the more gravity you command. People follow those who don't flinch. They trust those who stay calm when the ground shakes. They surrender to the man who has mastered himself. Untouchability is not arrogance. It's ascension. It's not loud, it's luminous. It's the silent certainty that no betrayal can break you. No insult can move you. No loss can define you, because you've already built your kingdom within. When you walk into a room now, you don't compete for space. The air adjusts to your frequency. Your movements are deliberate. Your gaze steady. Your voice measured and without saying a word. You shift the emotional temperature around you. They can't explain why they respect you. They just do. They can't describe why they fear crossing you. They just feel it. That's what true aura is, not a performance, but an atmosphere, a psychological field created by alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions. Untouchability is not about invincibility. It's about indifference to chaos. The storm still comes, but you no longer sway. People try to provoke, and you no longer flinch. Life tests you, and you no longer beg for ease. You sharpen through resistance. This is where Stoicism and Machiavellianism meet. One gives you peace. The other gives you precision. Combined, they create presence, and presence pure. Grounded. Unwavering is the most dominant energy in any room. You don't announce your transformation. You embody it. And the world responds accordingly. Your enemies shrink in confusion. Your allies elevate in your orbit. And your destiny unfolds like it was waiting for you all along. This is not fantasy. It's the result of discipline, of consistency, of refusing to be ordinary, because power, real power, isn't about breaking others. It's about becoming so whole that nothing broken can touch you anymore. You've reached the crown, not by conquering them, but by conquering yourself. And once that happens, the world bends naturally, not to your aggression, but to your aura of inevitability. So walk quietly. Carry no anger. No need to prove. No fear of loss. You have become the calm within the storm, the rare one everyone feels but few can define. That is the mark of the untouchable, the man who no longer fights for power, because he is power. And when you reach that point, they will finally understand you were never trying to rule them. You were mastering yourself. And in doing so, you became the force they can't shake, the presence they can't forget, the shadow they can't escape. Remember this: you don't need a crown to rule. You don't need applause to be powerful. Real dominance begins when you no longer compete for validation, because your energy already decides the outcome. Let the world chase noise. You move in silence. Let them talk about power. You become it. Every moment you stay calm when others panic. Every boundary you hold when others break. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, you're building an aura they can't touch. A presence they can't imitate. A legacy they'll whisper about long after you've left the room. This is what the Stoics called inner empire, the kingdom within that no betrayal, no loss, no chaos can destroy. And once you master it, the world bends quietly to your gravity, because when your mind is disciplined, Your emotions are mastered, and your silence speaks louder than fear. You stop playing the game. You become the rule by which it's played. So the next time someone doubts you, let them. The next time they underestimate you, thank them for giving you the advantage of surprise. Then rise.